Hi, and welcome back to Biblical Theology, Exegesis, and Hermeneutics, where meaning is always context-driven. I'm your host, John Strazisich. Okay, what I'm doing with this slide here is to show you where we have been here in the last number of weeks. We're in this middle section here in the book of Amos in chapters 3 to 6. And I entitled this Amos's Prophetic Announcements of Punishments and Paraenetic Instructions to Israel. So we've covered chapters 3 and 4 that covered the prophetic announcements of punishments. And then in our last session, we began here in section B that picks up chapters 3 to 5. Part A here was chapters 3 to 4 that was basically covering the Amos's prophetic announcements of punishments. Now we come to the Paraenetic instruction material, and we saw last week here, Yahweh's call to attention and lamentation over the fall of the house of Israel with basis clauses, and in the second basis clause down here in verse 5. Yahweh offered, his call or his instruction to Israel to seek Him, and that's where we have gotten to here in the first unit here in chapter 5. That was verses 1 to 5. Okay, then coming to this is maybe a little bit of review here. But what I want to show you is that when we make structural analysis, there's reasons why, I had outlined chapter 5, the first unit, to be verses 1 through 5. And you may find that quite odd. But the justification for such, a division of the material is going to be coming from the speech of this particular unit. And we'll find this here in the phrase, Dir Shuni v'chiyu, seek me and live. And you can note here that if we start up here at the top, Shim'u et hadavar hazeh asher anochi noseh alechem kina beit Yisrael. Okay, so hear this word that I am lifting up against you as a lamentation, O house of Israel. So the person speaking is Yahweh here. All right, and it's not the prophet Amos. Amos is speaking here. In using God's voice here as He's the instrument of Yahweh speaking. So this is specifically Yahweh's call to attention, and his paraenses to the house of Israel. And note here, Dir Shuni, seek me. Not Amos isn't telling you to seek himself. He's telling this is Yahweh speaking through Amos. Seek me and live. Now, we're going to see why you should divide the material between 1 to 5 and then 7 to 13. Okay, then coming then to our text here, you're going to see here that verse 6 begins here with Dir Shu et Adonai v'chiyu. And notice here, the previous text said, Dir Shuni, seek me. Whereas here, when we come here to verse 6, now we have Amos speaking, Dir Shu et Adonai, seek Yahweh, v'chiyu, and live. Pen yitzlach, lest he rush out, ka'esh, as fire on Beit Yosef, okay, on the house of Joseph. So this is definitely in the third person. So the that's why we divided the text between verses, in chapter 5, 1 to 5, because that was all a Yahweh speech. And it was all done in the first person. And now when we come here to verse 6, now we have a switch of persons. So this is now Amos's paraenetic material. Okay, for some of you it may be easier for you to see this on a structural analysis. And here, when in verse 5, where it says, "Seek me and live," since all of this is it's Yahweh's call to attention, Yahweh's lamentation, okay, Yahweh's two basis clauses, because this was all written in the first person. And where we're coming at today is, as we're looking at point 2 here of 6 to 13 here, is what we're primarily looking at. And then the exhortation is seek Yahweh and live. And that's the important thing to see, so that there's a change in the person who is speaking. And that is why, I made a difference between point 1 and 2. Okay, then coming here once again to the Aleppo Codex, we'll begin here at verse 6. Dirshu et Adonai, v'chyu pen yitzlak ka'esh beit Yosef, ve'achela ve'ein mikabeh leveit el, ha-chofechim la'ana mishpat, u'tzedakah la'aretz hinichu, osekima u'kesil v'chofek laboker tzalmavet v'yom laila hekshik hakore leme hayam vayish pechem al penei haaretz. And then I'll have to keep reading here below. Yehovah Shemo Hamav Lig showed all Az v'showed all Mivtzar Yavo. Okay, then we'll come to our translation here. Seek Yahweh and live, lest he rush out as a fire in the house of Joseph, and it consume, and there is none to quench. For Beit El. And we could supply something where those who turn judgment over to wormwood and who place righteousness on the ground, and then we're going to the hymn here, the one who made Pleiades and we'll say Orion, and who turns the shadow of death into morning, or we can just say darkness into morning, and darkens the day to night. The one who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them upon the face of the earth, and then I'll have to supply Yehovah is his name. And now this is interesting. This is the way it should be translated. And the one who causes destruction to smile against the strong. And or we can say, so that destruction comes against the fortress. There could be another way to translate the last half of this distich, but I think so that destruction comes against the fortress is probably the best way we can translate the last verse set there in verse 9. Okay, so this is just the beginning here, and we'll move on. Okay, now when we come to point 2 here, what we just got done reading, We're looking here just at 6 to 9, and so we're going to be looking at this portion of the text structurally. Okay. So we have this is headed under Amos's 2 prophetic Paraenses to the house of Joseph. That goes all the way from 6 to 17. And point A covers 6 to 13, whereas Amos's second twofold Paraenses stretches from verses 14 to 17. So what we just read there from the Aleppo Codex is just going to, we're looking here at 6 basically to 9. And it's very important that because you can get quite confused and it can look very disparate. But when you look at this in context, remember, meaning is always context driven. So we're going to have to see how the hymn to Jehovah here is functioning within the pericope in which it is situated. Okay, and that is, in between verses 6 to 13. And so it's very identifiable to look at verse 6. This is an exhortation with a negative purpose clause. Okay, seek Yahweh and live, lest, he rush out, upon the house of Joseph as a fire, something like that, right? And then it has these statements of what the leadership of the house of Joseph was doing. They were turning justice to wormwood, and they were taking righteousness and casting it to the ground. And then there's this hymnic phraseology that comes in here. So I entitled this here. It's a didactic hymn, and now that means it's instructional, okay? Didasko in Greek just means to teach. So it's a teaching hymn. It's didactic material. It's instructive material of a hymn to Jehovah, and it functions as an admonition to the leadership of Israel. So all of verses 8 and 9, in context, what this hymn says about Yahweh is instructive as an admonition to the erring, sinning leadership of Israel, who are casting justice, and turning it into wormwood, and taking righteousness and casting it to the ground. Because this ends with, Yahweh is the one who will make destruction smile upon the strong, and so that destruction comes against the fortress. So when let's just say that you were Mike Tyson, and some idiot out of the crowd decided that he wanted to challenge you. So when you got into the ring, Mike Tyson was smiling, and he was smiling because he knew that you weren't going to last. He was going to savor this. So what Yahweh's doing, he's causing destruction to smile against the strong, so that destruction enters, in against the fortresses. So it just goes like back to Psalm 2. Yahweh sits in the heavens and laughs, at those who are upon the earth, the leaders of the earth who want to cast off Yahweh's yoke from them. And he laughs because he is going to destroy them. Okay, now it would be remiss for me for not to show you this chiastic structure that certain have found here in the text here, and the point here would be Yehovah Shemo, and Yahweh is his name. And this was pointed out by Jan DeWard here, and he has structured the text in the following manner: a lament over the death of the nation, 5:1-3, call to seek Yahweh and live, 5:4-6, accusations of, we should say injustice or no justice, 5:7, a hymn to Yahweh, and then it ends with Yehovah Shemo, and Yahweh is his name, and then there's the hymn continues in verse 9. And then there is an accusation of injustice again here against the leadership of Israel, a call to seek Yahweh and live, and then finally a lament over the death of the nation. So you could see how A, corresponds to A down here, B corresponds to B, C to C, D to D, and this is the centerpiece. Now, this is fine. A lot of scholars today follow this. It's there in the text, and you can read it as such. But I don't want to take away the attention from some of the finer points that we would find in this lament over the death of the nation and this call to seek, because they I don't know, it's very difficult to always try to make these chiastic structures, although they do exist, and I don't want to say they don't, and this here, according to most scholars, works very well. So I'm just putting this here for your observation, and I'm sure that most of you are really going to like this. Okay, then we're going to continue explaining the structural analysis of the text. What we were doing in the previous slide was explaining the function of the hymn, this didactic hymn to Yehovah, within its context. So I determined that it functions as an admonition to the leadership of Israel, and that's certainly the way it functions here. And so sometimes it's not just a hymn where if you look at the context, it just doesn't seem to fit. But you have to then step back a little bit, and especially when you get down to verse 9, you can understand what the hymn is about. It is an admonition to the leadership of Israel. So hopefully you were able to understand that. But beginning with verse 6, we have an exhortation to seek Yahweh, and then it comes with both positive and negative purpose clauses, so that you may live. And then the negative purpose clause is, lest he rush out as a fire upon the house of Joseph. So we have these these points that need to be underscored here in verse 6. And then we have in verse 7 is Amos's statement of the injustice of Israel's leadership. It's those who are, turning over justice into wormwood, and they're casting righteousness to the ground. And that's very, very nicely chiastically constructed. We'll look at that when we get to the poetic parts. And then it turns here to the didactic hymn, and it begins with Yahweh, who made the constellations and the day and night, the one who controls the heavenly waters, and then Yehovah is his name, and Yahweh is the one who causes destruction on the powerful. So that's really, once you understand verse 9, then you'll understand how the hymn functions here within this Amos's prophetic Paraenses here to the house of Joseph. I just wanted, you just need to really be able to put this together. And then by having a very close reading, verses 1 to 5 really are to be grouped together because it's Yahweh who's speaking. Amos doesn't start speaking his prophetic Paraenses until you get to verse 6, and I already showed you that. So you'll see that there's a lot of confusion about where this text begins and where it ends. But the person who is speaking is the key to unlock the passage of knowing how to divide the text into its constituent parts. Okay, then coming into this slide, we're still using John Hobbins's methodology of outlining and understanding a poem. And up here in the top corner of right, we have Kav, and I use my liberty to somewhat, make adjustments, and I put down a tri-stick or distick. Then for the samak here, which becomes the symbol here for the strophe, and then you can see that I have put off different strophic levels to the text, and pretty much going along with my structural analysis, and then up here, Rak Etkem Yadati, this is the opening words of the poem that began here in Amos 3 to 6. So in the larger macro structure, these were the opening words of the poem. So this is the title of the poem. And then over here we have Dephos metry, which is the metrical pattern of the distick or tristick, and so I put down here the prosodic words per verset, and then for the pei here for the pasuk, it's the versification, and you can see that like I was saying, that I structured this off basically with my my structural analysis. Okay, jumping right back into the text here, coming back here to verse 6, and looking at the first point here, which is the exhortation with positive and negative purpose clauses. So we're coming here. This is Amos's first Paraenses to the house of Joseph. Seek Yahweh and live, and this covers all of 6 to 13, and so I have divided this off as a tri-stick. Dirshu et Adonai v'chiyu pen yitzlak ka'esh beit Yosef v'achala v'ein mikabe levet el. So this is, seek Yahweh so that you may live, lest he rush out as a fire in the house of Joseph, and it consume, and there is no one to quench for Beth El. And so this would exactly, this is an exhortation. It's to seek Yahweh with the positive, purpose clause that you may live, and then a negative purpose clause which comes here in the middle, lest he rush out as a fire in the house of Joseph, and then it's the results of that is that and it would consume, and there is no one to quench, to put out the fire in Bethel. So this nicely works out as a beautiful tri-stick, because once we come to verse 7, we have a statement concerning the injustice of the leadership, and we'll say of the house of Joseph. Those who are overturning justice to wormwood, and righteousness they leave on the ground. And a little bit about this we'll look here in the next slide. Okay, then coming then to this slide, what I wanted to do was highlight here verse 7 here, and show you the chiastic structure of Amos's statement concerning the injustice of Israel's leadership. Ha hofechim le'ana mishpat u'tzedakah la'aretz hinichu. So we have here ha-hofechim. This is this participial phrase. It's a cal participle, and it's the verbal aspect of verse 7 as this function as the substantive, and then we have here this hifil here, and so you can see that it's chiastically structured here for the verbal aspect, as well as the object of the verb here. We have mishpat and tzedakah, and then we have these prepositional phrases in the middle that modify the verb. So this is very nicely, chiastically constructed. It's we just look here at the inspiration of how God inspired Amos to write this, and it does it makes a beautiful poetic structure here to highlight the injustice of Israel's leadership, and that they're turning, justice is supposed to be sweet, but they've turned it into something very bitter. It's toxic, and then when it comes to righteousness, they basically left it on the ground. So justice and righteousness is basically the foundation of Yahweh's throne. So this is how you lead, and it's highlighted here by Yahweh's his righteous rule of the universe. But when you come to verse 9, you can see that Yahweh is able then to control the elements of creation to destroy the injustice of Israel's leadership. And what I wanted to show you was that verse 7 and 10 are on either side of this hymn. And this is Amos's didactic hymn here to Yehovah, and it functions as an admonition to the leadership. And you can see how verse 10, it follows exactly, verse 7 here, and it's also chiastically structured. You have the you have the verbal aspects here, in a chiastic construction here, and this is of Israel's leadership. They hate the one who reproves in the gate, but the one who speaks wholesome words, or I would say wholesome words, they treat as an abomination. They abhor. So they abhor the one who speaks, wholesome words. And so you can see that they're chiastically constructed. If I was to bring this below here, the first verse, the second verse set underneath the first verse set, you can see that the leadership is that is set at chiastically. Okay, so and so this highlights really the this didactic hymn. So when there's a lot more to the text, so that's just why reading Hebrew is it's just so much more valuable to understand these principles of reading the text poetically, looking how it's constructed. And then, as the moniker for my site, meaning is always context driven. So things like this, that, when you juxtapose, words to words, you have to see what the function and what function they perform within the text. And so you have to, this takes, you have to meditate on the text to be able to bring this out. Now, moving on here with verse 8 here, the one who made Pleiades and Orion, the one who turns, the shadow of death to morning, and the one who causes day to be darkened into night. So this is another beautiful tristick, and we need to see how this functions here. And I thought that Rhodas here had some good thoughts. The Pleiades and Orion, which are known from antiquity and visible from both the northern and southern hemispheres, they're mentioned here and in Job 9:5 and 38:31, always together. The point is that Yahweh is the heavenly king who rules over these celestial bodies. What is the significance of the choice of these two constellations? He questions this. This line may be a muted polemic against the widespread belief in the ancient world that stars were deities who could affect human life. And that's even true into the New Testament. I mean, we have, people that are lunatics. In Matthew chapter 4, you have people being literally moonstruck. And that's literal Greek. It's struck by the moon. So the heavenly bodies do affect people. And even in Job, Yahweh says that, the sweet influences of Pleiades that has upon the earth. So, and then we saw, in the book of Judges, how the stars fought against, Sisera, in the battle against the Canaanites, when at the conquest of Joshua. So the stars do function angelically, and there are powers, and you would be a fool not to, think that people who would practice, the occult, would be doing this, for empty reasons. They know full well the power of the devil. But remember, we don't play life according to the rules of Satan. We play life according to the one who made Pleiades and Orion, who is the creator, and whom the devil is just a creature of Yahweh, and who fell in rebellion against God because he wanted to be like the Most High. And people today, they want to follow Satan, and so they would follow him in such things as the polemics that we'll see at the end of the chapter here, and in 5:26, he goes on to say, astral deities appear in Amos 5:26, the end of the chapter, which provides evidence of the existence of such ideas in Israel, even if astrology never developed there to the extent with the sophistication that it did in Mesopotamia. The Pleiades and Orion have also been linked to seasons of the year, and then we would say here that Pleiades is linked to the winter and rain, and Orion to the summer and heat. This possible connection then would tie the next two lines, which is the one who made Pleiades and Orion with, because this is a tristick. So then the second verset, the one who turns the shadow of death to mourning, and the third verse that and he who causes the day to be dark, darkened to night. So we would have the change of from night to day, and then from day to night, and then that would then function to show the differences here between the Pleiades with Orion, and that one functions to mark off the winter season with the rain, and then Orion with the summer and heat. So at opposite times of the year. So this is showing opposites, day to night and summer to winter. So this would be the logic here of what's happening in verse 8, along with a muted polemic here against the worship of stars, in that it's going to foreshadow that proleptically here, coming here in 526. And then we have here the one who calls for the waters of the sea, pours them out upon the face of the earth. And then we have the refrain, Yehovah is his name, or if you want to say Yahweh is his name. So there we go. And now, most scholars are going to take this as more of a reference, not just to, Yahweh causing it to rain from time to time, but really looking back to the flood, and this is what most interpreters go with here, and then that would really nicely line up here with verse 9, the one who causes destruction to smile on the strong, or against the strong, I should say, so that destruction enters against the fortress, or comes against the fortress, and so this is this hifil here, participle, it means to smile, to gleam at somebody. It's an expression of a smile or a gleam, and then metaphorically, most translations would say flash, but really, like I was saying before, Yahweh is causing a destructive force to smile on the strong, in a negative sense, to smile against them, so that destruction comes against the fortress to destroy them. So this hymn here then functions definitely as an admonition to the leadership of Israel, who are committing injustice. And it's framed in verse 7 and in verse 10 here. It follows up right after this. They hate the one who reproves in the gate, and the one who speaks, words of integrity, they abhor. So you can see here then how it's sandwiched here, around the two slices of bread are sandwiched, and you have the didactic hymn to Yehovah in the middle. And I just wanted to highlight this is very important. Okay, then moving right along here, we left off here in verse 10. Saneu basha'ar mohiach vidover tamim yita'evu. So this here is, they hate the one who reproves in the gate, and the one who speaks wholesome words they abhor. So this again, we're looking here at, this is Amos's statement of the injustice of Israel's leadership, just as we had up here in verse 7. So this is exactly what's going on here. And then when we come here, this is really tightly, this is very well written. And then point 5 here, we have concluding judgment speech and consequential reactions of the wise, and this is nicely divided, A and B here, and they both come with with basis clauses. You can see the basis clause here in verse 12 for the judgment speech upon the injustices of Israel's leadership. And then we have a consequential conclusionary reaction of the wise with the basis clause here in 13. It is very nicely written. It kind of goes along with the poetic nature of a text that everything is bifurcated. And so then it's going to every thoughts are going to be come in twos, and so likewise it's manifesting that same type of generative thoughts that poetry that exists within poetry, and it helps and assists in Amos then coming to these two conclusions here. So let's look at them. And we look here at verse 11. Therefore, now most translators take this polel infinitive clause here, because you trample upon the poor. Now, if we look at the Akkadian root, we could say because they exact grain from the poor. But we'll just stick with the typical translation of Hebrew interpreters as because you trample upon the poor, and a portion of the grain you take from him, or take from it. So this here then is this comes with a therefore here, and so this is an inferential. It's an inference that draws a conclusion. That's what what Lacane here functions as, like un in Greek would function the same way, and so what we have here. This is an accusatory basis for the judgment. And what are they doing? They you build stone houses, but you shall not dwell in them. Desirable vineyards you plant, but you shall not drink their wine. So here's a reversal of fortunes here for them. For I know your transgressions are many, or your crimes are many, and your sins are numerous. Those who distress the righteous and take bribes, and they turn aside the needy in the gate. So you could see here that within the judicial aspect, and the political powers that be, they are, there's two systems of justice, one for the rich and one for the poor, and the poor always are always the losers here. And then here he has a final consequential conclusionary reaction of the wise. Therefore, those who are wise are the ones who have understanding in that time shall be silent, because the days are evil. So there's just sometimes if you open your mouth, you're screwed. There's the one who reproves in the gate they hate, and the one who speaks wholesome words they abhor. And so there's just a time. There's a time to speak, and there's a time not to speak, and it gets to a point where the best thing to do is just shut your mouth. Okay, then coming in for a landing here to the second part here of our text, and this is Amos's second twofold paraenses: seek good and not evil, and Yahweh's consequential statements of lamentation. And so this covers verses 14 to 17. And so Amos's initial paraenses here, with purpose and result clauses, we are going to see, right here in verse 14 itself. We have Dirshu Tov ve'al Ra lima'an tichyu. So we have here, seek good and not evil, so that you may live, and it will be such that Yahweh, the God of hosts, will be with you, just as you have said. And then his second paraenses: hate evil and love good, and cause justice to take its stand in the gate. Perhaps Yahweh may be gracious, Yahweh the God of hosts may be gracious, and there be a remnant for Joseph. Therefore, thus says the God of hosts, the Lord, in every square there shall be mourning, and in all streets they shall say, Alas, alas, and they shall call the farmer to mourning, and those who know lamentation to mourning. And in all vineyards there shall be mourning, for I shall pass through your midst, says Yahweh. So that's our text. This is Amos's second twofold paraenses, and then Yahweh's final statements here of lamentation. That, remember, the chapter began with lamentation, a proleptic call for lamentation in verse 1, and then it ends here with this consequential prophetic statement of lamentation, that there's going to be lamentation, whether it's in the rural vineyards or in the city squares. So Yahweh is passing through the midst of the house of Joseph, and it's like Yahweh passing through the midst of Egypt, and it's going to be destruction. And there is going to be heavy lamentation, mourning, and weeping over death and exile. So let's look here now at the exhortation to seek good. Okay, seek good and not evil, and here's the purpose, that you may live. So this is a beautiful tristic here. It's a 2-2-2. It's beautifully written, and then again we're going to have another tristic here, and it will be that Yahweh of hosts shall be with you, just as you have said, and then his second paraenses, and here there's this here is the exhortation: hate evil, love good, and we can see that this is somewhat opposites. It's an exhortation to hate, and then an exhortation to love. So we hate the evil and we love the good, and it's going it's reversing off of the seek the good and seek good and not evil here of the first one. So it's twofold here, and then it says in this distic here, hate evil, love good, and cause justice to take its stand in the gate. So this is remember, they hated the one who reproved in the gate, and the one who spoke wholesome words they abhorred. So now he's telling them the only way that they're going to have any type of salvation, they have to do a 180 here, and as we know, it's just not going to happen. They're too far gone. But there's this offer, perhaps Yahweh, God of hosts, shall be gracious to the remnant of Joseph. And then we have this particular clause here in verse 16 is not poetic, it's prose, so that's why I brought it over here to the right side. Therefore, that says, Yahweh, God of hosts, the Lord. This is quite a long, titular phrase title here for God, and it because let's look at the consequences of this of all these titles for Yahweh. These like in Samoa, the Matai, the Matai class, it's always about titles in these tribal cultures. I lived in Samoa, and so the Matais all had names and titles and stuff that they coveted. And here Yahweh has these coveted titles. He is the God of hosts. So typically this is referring to the stars. Yahweh is Lord over the armies of heaven, and He is the Lord here. In all squares there shall be mourning. And in all the streets, they shall say, "Alas, alas, hoy!" Oh, woe is me, basically. It's over the death. This is talking about the death of the nation. The consequences here of not heeding Yahweh is going to lead here to, this mourning. And so there's going to be mourning, with in the city squares and in the city streets. They're going to call the farmer to mourning, and those who know, or those who are, who are skilled at lamentation, they're going to be called to lament. And then it's reinforcing. There's going to be, mourning in all the vineyards. And then the basis clause, for I will pass through your midst, says Yahweh. Boom. I mean, there is an offer here, and this is why we call this this is the paraenetic material. This is it's an admonition, an exhortation, to with that is an emotional plea for repentance here, so that there may be a reprieve, there may be a remnant for Joseph. He may say this because Manasseh and Ephraim here are the hill country here where Bethel is situated. Okay, this has been another session of Biblical Theology, Exegesis, and Hermeneutics. Please like, share, and subscribe. And please do make comments. I appreciate that, and have a wonderful day.